Well, first of all, I'd like to welcome everyone for being here tonight. I know we all have very busy schedules, not just the education world, but the people in industry and the people in labor and all different types of disciplines here. But a lot of you I've spoke to on the phone over the last couple of weeks on what we're trying to do here, and what we have is a minority task force for learning for work. It's been one of these colds that's been out there. This is an epidemic form. That's where we're at. I was a design engineer and I was a sales engineer for many years before I came to the assembly. And I spent a lot of time in OEMs, all kinds of manufacturing facilities, from Budweiser to Kraft Lauville to Bosch and Lomb, out at the global foundries. And what was being asked of me was to try to set up bridge programs between industry, the trades, and education, working through a supplier. So I've taken all that, and my colleagues have. We've taken all that, and what we're doing here tonight is we're looking to see if we can come up with some testimonies, some ideas, some talk back and forth from industry, the trades, and to talk to the educators. And this is our Learning for Work task force. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Ken Blankenbush. He's one of our chairman of this committee, along with Mike Norris, and we'll start with Ken.
Thanks, Brian. This is our, first of all, let me tell you where we're from, I guess. That would be a good start. John, why don't you start?
Sure. Okay. Thanks, Assemblyman. I'm John Salka, and I'm the representative from the 121st Assembly District, which takes in all of Madison County, the southern part of Oneida County, and a good portion of Otsego County. It's 35 towns, and it goes from the south side of Oneida Lake down to Oneonta.
I'm Mike Norris, and I represent the 144th District, which is in western New York and parts of Erie, Niagara, and Orleans counties.
Of course, I'm Brian Miller. I represent the 101st District. I go from the town of New Hartford to Little Falls, all the way to Orange County. Yeah. So I have probably the biggest cross-section of New York State.
Yeah, why don't you explain that one? That's great. I'm Ken Blankenbush. I'm from Jefferson County. I represent 10 towns in Jefferson, all of Lewis, 7 towns in St. Lawrence, and 10 towns in Oneida.
I'm Robert Smullen. I represent the 118th Assembly District, which is Fulton County, Hamilton County, the upper part of Herkimer County, 6 towns in Oneida, and 9 towns in St. Lawrence County. So if you can look at a map of New York State and think the upper Mohawk Valley and the west half of the Adirondacks, it's a huge area, 46 towns, 13 villages, and 2 small cities. Just for this forum, just so everyone knows, I spent 24 years in the Marine Corps, learning and working all over the world. But more importantly, my dad was a mason. He was a Bricklayers and Allied Craft Workers union member, and he basically raised me as a mason apprentice. So between the Marine Corps School of Hard Knocks and my dad, I really have a passion for this topic and making sure that we're doing all the right things to give all the opportunities so we can offer prosperity to our posterity in the future. Thank you.
So the purpose of the task force, just to give you a brief briefing, this is our second one. Last week we were in Buffalo in Mike's district. Tomorrow night we're up in the North Country in Louville, and then we're going to Rochester, the Albany area, and Long Island. Everywhere we go in the state of New York, we've been told by employers and manufacturers that there are job openings, and to take a look at what our educational system is doing, because all of the students are not college-bound students, that we should be looking at ways of going from school to work. And that's the purpose of our task force. When we talk across the state of New York and get your responses from every one of the meetings that we're having, we are going to put a report together. The report will be there for everyone to look at, but at the end of the report, we're going to give solutions. And some of those solutions are going to be maybe tough to get through the state of New York and the Department of Ed, but we're going to push for that. And the report that we're going to bring out and what we're going to try to do is not, the purpose of that is not to put it on a shelf and say, well, look, we did a report. So we're going to try to keep pushing this, the squeaky wheel type of a thing, and that's the purpose of what we want you to tell us. We've got good feedback from Buffalo, and I think every part of the state may give us a little bit different views on this. So that's what we're here for. We're not here to talk. We want to listen to you, and I probably over my time. So I want to have Brian open it up, and we want to listen to what you have to say on what we could be doing to help.
Ken, do we want to talk about the ground rules or how we're going to do this tonight?
Well, you're the
Okay, what I'd like to do tonight is, I'd like to have some free conversation, through everybody that's here. We got, like I said, we got people from the trades, from industry, from some professional organizations, the schools. We're going to have hopefully we'll have some people here from the nursing part of it. But what I'd like to do, anybody who would like to stand up and give testimony right now, we'd like to have you come forward. I know we have Bartel Machinery on that, and I don't know if they're here yet. But we have this young gentleman over here who is a student who's lived through this and gone through school to employment. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you'd like to lead the way, that's probably the best way to do it.
My name's Richard Reiner. I'm from down Oneonta direction. I've been through school. I graduated. I did a 2-year program at BOCES. I went for conservation and heavy equipment technology. Through that program, I got a lot of opportunities to go right into the workforce without having to incur college debts and stuff like that. When I started that program, I was kind of reluctant, didn't really want to do it because I'm not big on change, and I wasn't sure what the outcome was going to be. I didn't want to waste my time with it. I've heard that some of those programs, kids get caught up in the trouble and stuff like that, and then some kids, they take away a lot. And I was just hoping to be one of the kids that took away a lot from it. Fast forward 2 years after I started, I graduated one of the top in the program. Had my CDL Class B, which I took, went right to work with that. A lot of certifications, such as New York Logger Training certification, safety trainings, OSHA 10 certification, stuff like that. And I was out working all summer for a company out of Binghamton, traveling and making state rate on a highway crew. So 18 years out of high school, making 25, 30 bucks an hour, I couldn't complain. And looking back, without BOCES, I probably wouldn't have had that. So I support the workforce, like training and stuff like that. I don't believe that all kids have to go to college. I wasn't one of them to do that. I was open to it. I still am if something goes bad. I'm not saying college is a bad thing, but some kids could go out and just get somewhere without it. And so far, that's what I've been doing, and it's been working out for me. And I just believe that the apprenticeships and stuff like that should be pushed more than college, or at least equally. Very rarely do you hear from teachers and people of the school that they're like pushing apprenticeships, which I think they should. My first apprenticeship from BOCES, part of the requirement to graduate was that you got to do a work study for 2 weeks with a local company. It's up to that company if they wanted to pay you or not. And I got lucky that the company I was working for this summer was doing a job on the Route 206 in Masonville. They were doing a box culvert job, so I was there for 2 weeks, and it was 2 hours out of every day, and in that 2 weeks I made like $700 or $800 basically in the time I would be at school. So that was encouragement to get involved more in the workforce instead of just sitting back and kind of being lazy with it. So from there it took off. I had my foot in the door for a week after I graduated high school. I was out working. We went out to Geneva, New York. We were out working there for a few weeks, and then I was up in Rochester for like 6 to 8 weeks up until about a month ago, and then we were working around town. So it's definitely a good thing to push the programs and have the apprenticeships and stuff like that, and I don't believe college is for everyone, so that's where I stand on it.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think that now that you went through this, do you think that we should start that earlier in your education years rather than the last 2 years in school?
I do believe that at least by 10th grade, it should be at least introduced. Like halfway through my 10th grade years, where I first really heard about what BOCES was and what they had to offer. Prior to that, I had no idea. I heard of BOCES, but honestly, I thought it was for more mentally challenged people or people that had behavioral issues. And that's what I felt that, like, why would I want to go there and be one of them
Yeah.
when I knew I had more potential?
So you've heard in high school, like I've heard on some of this, oh, you're a BOCES kid?
Yeah.
And that's the
what they-
stigmatism that we got to get rid of.
Right.
And
Because
so,
kids are scared of that, and then if they don't go there and college is out of the question for them, either they can't afford it, or they don't want to do it, or they don't feel they have to, they're not going far in life
Yeah.
without technical training or college. So I feel like once I overcame that getting picked on for being the BOCES kid, which I really didn't much, but once I overcame that I could deal with that if it did happen,
mhm.
I was able to go places.
Good.
So.
By the way, it wasn't lucky. You create your own luck, you know.
Yeah.
That's right, with hard work and proper training and the proper direction, we can all do a lot of things.
That's for sure.
Do you think the schools could have done, your high school, do you think your high school could have done something different to promote that
If they
career
had
path?
even one day out of the school year for, let's say, 9th and 10th graders even, just like a career day. Actually, Sydney started that. I went to Sydney High School, and for the past few years they've been doing a career day where it's, for example, Raymond Corporation out of Green, they've been there, and some other bigger companies, because they know that the school knows that there's a shortage of people to work, and Sydney, I think, found that as an opportunity to give a career day and then show what could be done instead of just going to college. So if you get what I'm saying, they're trying to give more options to the students, and I feel like that helped. The first year I had that, I think I was in 10th grade, and I feel like that helped, that I saw potential after either BOCES or high school, so that that persuaded me to go to BOCES so that I could do something with it and go to one of those companies that were at the career day. But I ended up going out towards Binghamton direction to another company. But that definitely did help to have a career day, or even just something to kind of advertise it, I guess you could say, to push the technical trainings.
I guess I do have, oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Did your high school, did it have agriculture in the classroom?
Yep.
It
Yep,
did?
we have an FFA program, and we had certain ag classes, some small engine classes, welding. It wasn't in-depth welding, but it got us familiar with it,
Yeah.
so it definitely helped. And now our school actually has a welding program through Raymond Corporation. It's all funded by Raymond, and like we just got a new shop and everything last year, new welders, and there's a lot of kids that are taking that up. So Raymond's, they're definitely willing to work with people or work with school districts because they see a shortage in workers, so.
When you went to BOCES, how many hours were you there?
It was about 2 hours out of the
So,
day.
so you took a bus
Yep,
from school
yep,
and then took a bus back.
yep.
Would it make any sense to have a full-time BOCES with the core teachers going to you rather than the other way around?
I feel like for kids like me, yes, because I'll be honest with you, I was kind of a bare minimum, do what I have to do to graduate. But then there's other kids that want the extra, let's say, engineering classes or something. I feel like if they want to do that, it'd take a lot to get all those teachers to cover all those topics up there to BOCES. So for certain kids, it would be wise to have core classes there. Certain kids, it would be, I think, more work to do that than it would be to transport them to the center for BOCES. So.
Okay. Anything else you want to add?
No.
Okay, it wasn't so bad.
Thank you, you did a great
Yeah, you
job. I know you were concerned about standing up, but you did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you for the input.
I'd love to go next
Okay.
if you're looking for volunteers.
Yeah,
Okay,
go ahead, whoever.
My name is Martha Ponzi, and I am the director of the apprenticeship program for New York State Manufacturing. I work for MACNY, but I am also the director for all of the manufacturing associations across New York State. So we have 6 affiliated groups that we work with, 2 in the Buffalo area, 1 in Rochester, Syracuse, 1 in Albany, 1 in the Hudson Valley, and recently 1 on Long Island. So I'm very excited that you're going to all of those locations because I think I have people there that can speak to regionally what's going on in each of those locations, and I think it's really important to look at the community you're in and to see what those problems are. We approached the New York State Legislature about 5 years ago and said that we wanted to be the first group sponsor for manufacturing apprenticeship in New York State other than a labor union. And we asked to do that because most of the large apprenticeship programs that had been in New York State prior had been run by General Motors, had been run by Kodak, Xerox, IBM. We had very robust programs, and we had a number of people that had gone through them. The big difference between those programs and what we were looking at in 2016 is that throughout the age of very large manufacturers in New York State, they had dedicated people that worked for those companies and ran apprenticeship programs. They employed people whose jobs it was to bring people new in the door with little or no skill and immediately put them into training programs, and they started to build their workforce right from the bottom up. New York State is now about 95% employers in manufacturing that have 100 people or less. When you have 100 people or less in your company, you do not have the manpower to operate an apprenticeship program independently. And that's what we were seeing, and that's what we wanted to address. In 2017, we started our pilot in central New York, and we have, I said, expanded into all of the other areas across New York State. But I think that we learned a lot of lessons our first year out. First year, what we learned was we were really good at what we were doing. We were getting traction. Companies were interested in bringing in new people and starting to build their own employees. We said, why don't you start with incumbent workers? Maybe someone who's been with you 2 to 5 years, who's never had the opportunity to go on and get education that supports what they're doing, and give them the opportunity to move up first. That was awesome. What we had no idea was going to happen was that the entry-level people that we thought would be coming to the door don't exist. And they don't exist for the reason that this young man was talking about. We don't talk about that in schools. You asked, is it too late in 10th grade? I think it's too late in 4th grade. In 4th grade, students have already decided whether they are math and science oriented or whether they're not. And they have absolutely no idea what those skills are that are going to allow them to work in any of these given fields. The other thing that I think is completely lacking is that we have no method, no structured method for talking to students about what careers are. If I go into a 4th grade classroom, and I should say that I'm now the Director of Workforce Development at MACNY, and we have Partners for Business and Education and the New York State School Boards Association co-affiliated with us currently, so we have access to districts all across New York State. And we did it intentionally, because kids don't know what jobs are. We just did a program for 50 guidance counselors at Syracuse Research Corporation, SRC in Syracuse. And I can tell you right now that the guidance counselors have no idea what happens at SRC. They're like, if you're not an engineer, then there's no place for you there. So if you don't want to be an engineer, why would you want to even go and look at something at SRC? Well, I think the woman that's the head of SRC's Community Talent Program said to them, I'm a graphic designer, I'm the head of communication. The young woman that just gave the presentation, she used to be a news anchor. We brought her in for her extensive communication skills. We're using her to recruit our talent. We have people that have come through from high school programs, have been hired here, and are now in management positions. Manufacturing is one of the only sectors left in the United States where you can enter from high school and become the president of a company. Gentleman who's the head of leadership at MACNY started out as a toolmaker at Volpe Tools in Auburn, New York. He's now a John Maxwell certified trainer, and he goes all over the country doing things. That's not an oddity. In manufacturing, people want you to come in, they want you to learn from the ground up. And what they want to do is they want to give you a career pathway, a place to come in with an education that you think is suitable for you right now. Every job is going to require growth, but that growth is for you, and it's to help support the company that you work for. So this young man he said, you know, I don't know if college is for me. Maybe it isn't today. It might be 2 to 5 years from now. That should not dismiss him from being a valuable part of the workforce. And the work he does for the next 2 to 5 years should be the foundation for going back to school and being able to actually take the education he's learning, apply it right away, and move up to a higher position. Anything that you can do to help us get into schools at an early age, to provide a structured way for us to connect business and industry, we're here to help you. So, you know, anything you can do is great. I'm looking at the paperwork that you're handing out to talk about the youth apprenticeship program. I believe we have the first youth apprenticeship program in the state at the Syracuse City Schools. We started that this year. Assemblyman Magnarelli helped us to get some money out of the assembly 2 years ago. It's taken us a year to kind of do our planning. This is our first year really with students. We are already starting in the 9th grade, and even that is really kind of too late. But in ninth grade, we've already started with career coaches, mentors. We're starting to bring in apprentices into our pre-apprenticeship to talk about their journeys. How did you get here? What are you doing? What were the challenges you faced? What do you see as your most positive, experiences? And what can I do to make sure that I have the same type of positive experience? We're going to work on certifications. That's our biggest route, because when you come out of a CTE program, depending on where you live in New York State, depends on what your CTE program is. There really isn't any conformity amongst all the educational districts. It's just topic headings. So I don't know if somebody coming out of a welding program at BOCES is really getting the same education as, a welder at a CTE program at a high school, and neither do our employers. So they're looking for those certifications. They're saying, bring me somebody with OSHA 10. Bring me somebody who maybe can get through the certified production technician, MSSC, something that I can look at and I say, oh, that's a national credential. I know exactly what that is. If you've got that when you come to my door and you've got an attitude where you want to come to work, you want to learn more, I'm all about hiring you today. And the other thing I don't think that we're explaining to students and/or parents very well is that most of the employers that I work for would be interested in paying for that education. So come and work for me for, a summer. Let me try you out, see if you are, let me pay for you to go back to school. You can continue to work for me even if it's just summers, weekends, whatever we can work out. But I want to put you in an apprenticeship program. I want to structure the learning you're doing, and I want to help you earn while you learn so that you're not accumulating debt, so that you are still able to do things like have a home and a car and all those good things that a lot of students who have mounting student debt are not allowed to, are not able to do. You said Bartel was coming. Bartel has 15 apprentices. We've been working with them since the very first
I was with
minute.
Bartel when we set up the apprentice program over there.
Yep. Yep. So we've been working with Pam and Pat for the last 3 years. And, that's going to allow them to expand their workforce. They didn't know how they were going to stay in business. They didn't have workers. And now they're looking at expanding their workforce. They have just invested in 15 people. Their apprenticeship program right now, when they bring new people in, they're going to MBCC 4 mornings a week on Bartel's dime, and then going to work after that. And if they need to still get their 40 hours in a different way, then they do that. But they've been paying them. I work with West Rock in the Syracuse area. They're doing the same thing. They're going to be sending them to the BOCES electrician program for adults the first 9 months of their employment. And then they're going to be in a registered apprenticeship program working towards their maintenance mechanic apprenticeships. And they start out at $27 an hour, and they'll be paid while they're in school. So they're going to pick up the tuition, and they're going to pay them for the time that they're in work. I could tell you 100 other stories about companies that are doing that.
Yeah.
Right now, Huhtamaki in Oswego has over 60 openings. The average age of their workforce is 55 years old. He said in 5 years, none of the workers he has over the age of 50 will still be there.
Yeah.
Huhtamaki,
Now, in
Novelis, all
Buffalo,
those.
in
So-
Buffalo, we heard certification.
Yep,
Just
absolutely.
like what you were saying, too.
Absolutely.
And we heard early.
Yep.
And certification. And so we're hearing some of the same things, which
Mm-hmm.
is good. Mackney, I know, because I used to go down, I haven't been in the last couple of years, down to their breakfast.
Yep.
And one of the questions that came up the one year, and that was only a couple of years ago, was whoever was doing this talking asked the manufacturing group that were sitting there, how many job openings did they have right now? And if everyone in the room raised their hand.
Everyone.
Everybody
in the
has
room will
jobs.
raise their hands.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's amazing that we don't do something about it.
And it's getting worse, not better. And if we don't do something to combat that, all these companies that want to be here in central New York and allow us to, have kids that want to stay here and raise families and all those good things, they're not going to be able to stay here because they don't have a trained workforce.
Well, this has been going on for a long time. Like I said, in my past life, I was a sales engineer. You know, we were in the Schneider packagings of the world.
Yep.
I was out in Syracuse every day. This has been going on for a long time. This has been a sharp downward spiral, and we've pretty much hit the bottom. But I do a lot of research before I come to these places. From South Dakota, you know, this could be Central New York. Help wanted, too many jobs, not enough workers. But you said something very interesting on manufacturing and the disciplines within manufacturing. It's not just the guy who runs the lathe, designs whatever.
No.
There's accounting, there's advertising,
Yeah.
there's technical writers. You know, most of the time when the educators ask us to come, and I'm told I can't go on with a monologue here, most of the time when the educators ask us to come in to go to career day, we talk about one certain aspect
certain
of
area.
what we do. They want the engineer, they want the whatever there. They're not broadening their
No.
reach to the technical writers, the graphic designers, the
We run STEM career nights through Partners for Education and Business, and we had, over the past few years, been doing things that were associated with single careers. And this year, one of our goals was that anytime a company sponsors one of these STEM career nights, you have to bring like 3 to 5 people that work for you. And I want to know, how do I come in as an entry-level person out of high school? What about people with vocational degrees, 2-year degrees, 4-year degrees? I run apprenticeship programs. This summer, I had students who are still in high school and are starting their apprenticeship programs. I also had PhDs at the research base. So apprenticeship is a tool to help people to take education and put it with lifelong skills. And it also gives you the ability to grow a foundation that allows you to go in a lot of different directions. And I think that that's one of the things that you see when you go to a manufacturer, is that you might come in as an accountant, and you might work as an accountant for 10 years and then find out that they're going to move you to technical sales because you know all about what my company does, and you know it better than a lot of the other people. You're personable. Let's send you for a couple business classes and get you some of that sales training, and let's move you somewhere else if that's something you'd like to do. I worked with a company last year out of Vermont, and the gentleman that took us around was the head of their HR department, and he had started as a CNC machinist on the floor. He said, I was in college, I didn't like it very much, I couldn't find any practical value to it, I wanted to do something. He said, so I went to work for a company called Hypotherm in Vermont, and he said, and they put me in a CNC apprenticeship program. He goes, and I was good at it, and I had really great communication skills, and they said, you know what, you should be a supervisor. And then they made me a trainer. And then after I was a trainer, they said, you need to get a BS and let's put you in HR. He goes, now I have a master's degree. He goes, the possibilities were always there. It's just, how do we get people to understand that those possibilities exist? And, you know, the other thing I will say is, every job in this world is going to be a technical job moving forward. You know, as soon as we get 5G, we're going to have 50 billion pieces of data on a phone that I can look at in 1 minute. Every job is going to become a technical job. Every job you have is going to require more education. What that education is going to be different for each and every person, but we're always going to be lifelong learners. So I want to bring that to schools as well, that, you know, you're going to decide maybe a sector of life that you want to be in. If you want to be in healthcare, if you want to be in IT, if you want to be in manufacturing, they're all going to be intertwined now. Because the person, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, excuse me. How do you best identify the students to get into your program practically? What I'm trying to figure out is practically, you know, do you get them in high school or before, and how do you best identify them? Or do you have any suggestions how we can best identify students?
So I think you've got to start working with students and start bringing in speakers, you know, when they're in elementary school. to talk about careers and to talk about different kinds of jobs. So, not only to have the doctor in healthcare or the nurse in healthcare, but how about the person that fixes the machines or designs the ENT at Hillrom, or somebody maybe that does technical drawing for manuals. My daughter is a nurse practitioner. When she first got out of college, she designed pamphlets that went home to people that had cancer. And so it was a communication skills. How do you explain to someone what the drug is that they're taking and how and why, it's a priority to do it this way, or it's not a priority, it's critical that you do it this way, you take it at this time, all those kinds of things. That was a healthcare career. It was not one probably that anybody in this room or anybody in high school knows even exists. We need to get more, different kinds of careers out there so that kids start to realize that it's not just, doctor, lawyer, and NFL football player. So what do we do? I think one of the best models that I've seen for selection is in Oswego at the City BOCES P-TECH program. They have business owners, people that are in management positions at those businesses, education, and the students and their parents at the same table. Those businesses are actually going to each and every school in Oswego County and saying, why isn't your child signing up for P-TECH? Do you know what it is? Do you know that, the state of New York will pay for your child's 2-year degree before they get out of high school, that they'll offer them the chance to intern over the summers, that they'll give them, work experience. They go directly to the schools, and I think that's probably the very, very best program that I have seen so far across the state. Hudson Valley does one that's very similar. They have really great business partners, but that business partner relationship has to start early on. It really does. And so.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yep.
I'd love to hear your next 99 stories.
I know, and I'm sorry, I probably talked way too long. I'm the monologue of tonight, though, I'll talk about, so.
But I know we have other people that.
I am sure there's lots of
But
other people that have great
The
stories.
one comment is that when we go across the region,
Yep.
you're going to have people.
Absolutely.
Okay,
I'll give you my card, and I'll tell you where you're going and who you should be meeting with.
okay.
Absolutely.
I've always been told where to go.
You're on deck. You're on deck.
Good evening. My name is Teresa Carla, and I'm actually the superintendent of Skinevus Central School. And actually, Richard is my son, so I'm wearing 2 hats tonight. I will tell you, I was a first-generation college graduate in my family, and so what I always heard was, you're going to college, and I was raised by blue-collar workers. So that's what I transferred to Richard and my other children, and I was very disappointed when he said, I want to go to BOCES. And I actually tried to discourage him because I said, I know what kind of kids go to BOCES. I'm a principal at the time. A lot of the bad kids go to BOCES. I don't want you going there. And fortunately, he fought me on it and went. And it's probably the best thing that he's ever done. So, you hear, you learn from your children, which is true. And so he's kind of changed my mind shift. And I have now brought that into my career as a superintendent. So, but the point I'm trying to make is it's a mind shift. Educators are really, as teachers, we are kind of pretty much groomed to tell kids to go to college. As principals and guidance counselors, and as superintendents, and if you look at everything that follows along with that, I sat at Richard's graduation in June, and when all of the kids who got scholarships to go to college stood up and were applauded for, I felt badly for him and his friends who got no recognition whatsoever. There are no scholarships for kids that are going into the workforce because the assumption is they don't need money for anything. What about work boots that cost $175? What about clothing? What about tools? Those kinds of things. So actually this year at Skinevus, I'm trying to get a scholarship started for a student that is going into the workforce because they deserve recognition as well. It's not just about students going to college. So I think we have to shift everybody's mind, and we have to start promoting Definitely starting earlier in school. I was a business teacher before I was a principal, so I had speakers come in all the time. But again, we didn't start that until 7th or 8th grade, and the push just is not there to make kids understand the importance of that middle-level blue-collar worker and why we need to have that. From a school perspective, when you're a small rural school like us, one building, 330 kids, we do not have a technology program. We do not have a business program. We don't have any electives for our students other than the bare minimum. And so we send our students to BOCES, but that's a cost concern for us as well. So I think if you're going to start promoting this, you need to also ask for funding to help schools be able to provide this for their students.
I have a question. A lot of the accent is making sure that the students are, these types of options are given to them early in their educational career. Would it be helpful if, in fact, this could be part of the teacher training while they're in college, learning how to be a teacher, that there could be at least some, maybe not something as much as a whole course about it, but at least more orientation on how to guide students into the into P-TECH programs and all that. So it's actually formally part of their training to be able to be cognizant that this should be an option that as teachers they should be able to recognize in a student and or be able to offer that type of that type of option.
Absolutely. I think you have to go one step further, and you have to start looking at the curriculum that we teach children, whether it's ELA, math. The stories that we tell children are centered around college experiences. They're not centered around going into the workforce right after high school and what you can do with your life if you're able to do that. So we teach children at a very early age, just by the curriculum that we teach them, that they need to be on this specific path.
Right.
So I think, yes, I think that's definitely a good idea, college prep programs, but you also need to go to the state education department and start talking about what can we infuse into curriculum that will allow for students to understand the importance of manufacturing jobs and jobs after high school that don't involve college, and also looking at the college debt that's associated with it. My oldest daughter is graduating from Roanoke this May with $65,000 in college debt and no job yet. And so Richard brings that up to me often. I have no debt, and I have a job.
She's going on a loan.
So, I think that, again, it's a mind shift, and it has to happen across the board, not just in schools, but also parent education. I was an educated parent, and I was not educated, so I think that's important too.
Mike, and I mean, if you remember this right too, in Buffalo, one of the speakers said that we should maybe look at a rebranding of BOCES. And maybe that's something that, because what you just said is, is across this, I hear that all the time, and maybe even a name change. Something that, but it was a kind of an interesting comment when they were talking about rebranding the name or rebranding the thing, so that's something that we may have to take a look at.
And I think it's been around for a long time. When I was in high school, I graduated in 1989, and you were a Botard if you went to BOCES, which is absolutely awful. And I still hear that from kids today. And I think that we need to look at another way to make them understand that it's a necessary thing. It's not just for kids that have special needs. It's not just for students that aren't college material. Richard is definitely college material. He's very smart, but choice not to go that route right now.
I will tell you one thing too, is that when we went into schools, actually in this area last year, and we had parent orientations, we had parents that called us and said, stop telling my child that you can make $25 an hour without a college education, because that's not true. And I said, it is true. And they said, no, that's absolutely not true, and you're putting ideas in my children's minds. And again, here we have a great, example of what can happen. If you've got a plan, you know what you want to do, and he's got an awesome foundation that if he wants to do this for the rest of his life, that's great. But if he doesn't want to, if he wants to now go to college, he's well prepared to do that. And probably financially in a lot better position to do it as well.
I'm actually considering asking him for a loan, so.
Thank you.
So you're actually talking about a cultural readaptation. I mean.
Absolutely.
'Cause, and we know from, in our form of business, that cultural mores are very, very difficult to change. Once someone grows up with a particular style of doing things, you know, the old dog, new tricks kind of thing. And so it's got to start, the earlier the better. So.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
And parent education too, definitely.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Okay,
Anybody?
Mr. Cushman, back there.
Good evening, Assemblyman. Thank you for having this forum, and Assemblyman Smolin, thank you for your great service to our fantastic country. Thank you. God bless you. Once again, thank you. Assemblyman Salka, I think that you just raised one of the most important points that unfortunately is sometimes missed, and that is industry is making great strides to work with the educators in exposing them to the different trades, the opportunities in those trades. And you're right, not everyone is going to be a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer. All right, the backbone of America is people who know how to work with their hands. But the point you just raised is fantastic, and that is there is a gap, and I say this with all due respect. We have great minds coming out of our colleges, those who want to be teachers and educators. Unfortunately, through no fault of their own, how many of them have experienced private industry? Few. Yet we are expecting them to reinforce the things that industry wants to show, all right, and can only show or expose to them on a limited basis. So let me throw this idea out. I have no idea if it has any merit. We're here to brainstorm. Perhaps for those students who are pursuing a career in education, provide them with incentives, whether it is financial or degree incentives, if they select internships to work in industry for some period of time, to be exposed to the real world. What I see, fiber instrument sales. I'm vice president of engineering at Fiber Instrument Sales. As I mentioned to you, I'm only 19 years old. All my gray hair comes from being the mayor in the village of Ilion some years ago. But you know, what we see is we are willing, and we do invest in every single employee in fiber optic training, okay? Every single employee has to go through training. But the prerequisite for us to make that investment is usually based on the soft skills. And we see a number of great minds, but unfortunately, young great minds, creative minds, unfortunately, they are lacking the soft skills. And that is going into the workplace dressed decently. And again, I say this most respectfully. Putting their hand out and saying, Mr. Miller, my name is, all right? Being able to write a cogent letter or memo, all right? So there is more to just the training. There is more to just the math. It is the environment. It is the culture of the private workplace and how you act in that and how you interface with others. And I think that it would behoove us all, for those minds who are in an educational curriculum, they want to be teachers, all right? Expose them to it. Allow them to expose the students to opportunities that they may not otherwise have.
I know a lot of politicians that should be exposed.
So we won't go there.
No.
We won't go there.
But I think you're right. How are they, how do you direct a student who, you know, a teacher has no idea about what's out there?
Exactly.
Or I have my son-in-law's a guidance counselor, so, you know, I ask him, I don't get into very many questions with him because we have opposite views on a lot of things. But anyway, I just wonder how many guidance counselors are even aware of any of that. And, you know, is it just because the school districts are zeroing them in on getting kids the AP courses, getting them 28 college credits before they get out of school so they could go to college and still get $65,000 worth of debt and having a degree that you may not even, you may not even find a job in? I mean,
The state education department is doing that to us because we have, as a school district, we are basically obligated, we have points for all the AP courses we teach. We get points for the college credits we get for kids. We don't get points for sending them focus.
No, you're right. Yeah.
So that, again, it's coming from a different direction.
Yeah.
Sounds like there's a competitive disadvantage
Yeah,
to some extent.
yeah.
The guidance counselors, a couple
Thank you.
of the
Yeah,
comments that they
thank you.
made when they were there last week was, like you said, none of us have experience in business, so we don't have the experiences to share with students about what the opportunities are. We're all looking at the price of homes in our neighborhoods that are all dependent on, are you sending 96% or 98% onto a four-year degree? But one of the things that we never track and is probably hugely affecting our workforce is that even those districts that are sending 98% of their students to a four-year education after they graduate, how many of them actually are graduating from college? Because I will tell you that I have a number of apprentices who started out in criminal justice and figured out that, policeman, I have to work at a jail, I don't want to do that. Or they're, on their way to, a nursing degree, and they say, but I don't want to touch people. And so now I have $30,000 worth of debt, no degree to show for it, and then back living with mom and dad. We get a ton of those people, and that was something that all the counselors said. That's not a number that the state has ever required that we track. They want to know how many are going, but they don't want to know how many are finishing.
Good evening, gentlemen. First of all, again, thank you for this work. This is important work, and very happy that you're doing this. I just wanted to come up and give some insight on, I myself was a former CTE student when I was in high school, like Richard here, and it benefited me immensely in the sense that I was able to get my first job right out of high school here locally at a television station. I was part of a radio and TV broadcasting program, and just up the hill here on Smith Hill is my first job right out of high school. And that helped me pay for college. So I did want to go to college and knew I wanted to go to college for the career field that I took in a CTE program. My point is that the CTE programs, yes, they're prepping students to go to the field of work, but they are also prepping students for the field, college, in the sense that I was able to major in something in college that I was able to get training in while in high school and do very well in college because of that training. So I was working professionally, getting my foot in the door in the television field, and was able to go on to college and major in broadcasting and get a degree in that field and do very well. I was able to then go back and teach the program that I was actually a student in when I was a couple years into the industry of TV. And one thing that I wanted to bring up right now is the CTE programs are all validated through our technical advisory committee. So industry partners, workforce members, we are partnered with the workforce. They come in and they validate our programs on a yearly basis, a couple times a year, to meet with our staff teaching the programs and to validate that the curriculum that they are teaching is relevant and based on industry standards, that the equipment that they're using is relevant and based on industry standards. A point that I'll bring up is my technical advisory committee recommended for my broadcasting class when I was a teacher a new HD television camera by JVC. And if you look to our gentleman here, he's using the exact same camera that was recommended by our advisory committee. And the point for that is that, yes, the equipment that we're using, the skills that we're giving these students in these programs are validated in the workforce. They are what is currently being used because we want to prep our students for the workforce and make sure that the hands-on training they're getting while in CTE programs is relevant and that they are having an easy transition going in and getting those jobs and being successful. So, again, I thank you for your work tonight. It's excellent work and very beneficial.
Thank you. I'm going to switch gears a little bit over here. some guys from the trades and the unions. Bill, would you like to get up? Oh, I'm sorry, Dave, I didn't, is the line back there?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I just went in front of you.
So my name's Bill Maxwell. I represent carpenters out of Local 277. Thank you for having me here this evening. Let's start out, everybody here know how to use a skill saw? Yeah?
My wife,
Where'd you learn how to use it?
My dad.
Okay. Some of us learned in shop class. Okay? And some of the other testimony given here tonight, early exposure to different opportunities, shop class. BOCES has a great program. I work with Kathy a lot down there in Herkimer BOCES, and Nida BOCES and Madison BOCES, and all over the place. And really, if these students don't know what they have to offer, they don't know it's an option. All right. I feel there should be shop class offered to kids in 9th and 10th grade, and other exposures before that early on. If they don't know these opportunities are there, they're not going to go down those pathways. So like this young gentleman right here, doing a great job, decided that he didn't want the student loan debt, and he's doing good for himself. My son got out of high school, 19, I got him in an apprentice program at the Carpenters. He's 27, he made $65,000 last year, plus he has a pension plan, health care provided to him, and an annuity plan on top of that. There's a lot of other options than going to college and accumulating that debt. Not trying to devalue a college education whatsoever, okay? There's a lot of career paths out there that don't require it. They do offer supplemental training and different things like that. So for me, I learned how to use a table saw, a skill saw, chop saw, all that stuff when I was in high school. And they're right, maybe BOCES should be rebranded to a different title, because you do have that stigmatism out there.
we're not trying, we're not trying to downplay college at all.
Absolutely
We're
not.
just trying to make it a level playing field for the kids that don't want to go to college
Right.
and that have stories like this and the stories that your son, at what, 19?
At 19, he got an apprentice program. He's now 27. He earned $65,000 last year.
All I know is
Plus the
up
benefits.
where I live, I can't find carpenters.
Right, exactly. We have, the average age of our membership is about 47. In the next 5 or 10 years, we're looking at a mass exodus. Our local goes from Little Falls to Auburn, from Pennsylvania to Canada. We've got 2,600 members, about 275 apprentices. Okay, a lot of them, our attrition rate isn't that great because they come to us and they get indentured into our program. We send them to work, and they don't realize that they have to work when it's raining out, or it snowed last night, so we don't have to work today. Oh no, we got to work today.
Yeah.
Okay, we work every day. We work year round. This is upstate New York. We have weather. We'd never have a facility like this if we shut it down every time it rained or snowed or got cold. We've had some apprentices leave because it was too hot outside. How come we're not working in the air conditioner? We got to build a building to turn the air conditioner on so that we can enjoy it now. So I think a lot of it is the early exposure to different opportunities, and like a few of the speakers had said, changing that mindset of the educators that there are other opportunities. And I realize that there is a struggle with the state as well, because we do talk to guidance counselors on a regular basis, and we're hearing the same thing, that that the state requires us to do this. Okay, and at some point in time, that has to change at the state level.
Yeah.
And we're hoping this panel right here can, help achieve that.
It's like I said in the very beginning, that's a hard task, too, to
Right.
get them, the state ed, to listen.
Right, and it is very challenging, and we don't have the answers. We're hoping with these brainstorm sessions that, we can, come up with something, some way to present to them that, the culture needs to change a bit. 30 years ago, we were seriously depleted in college-educated people for the upper management positions and things like that. Now we've successfully flooded the market and drove those wages down. And, the cost of education is going up, and the wages are going down. And, you know, I don't know where to, I don't really know where to go next to try and, you know, change that culture.
I think what's gonna have to happen, and sometimes when you deal with these large bureaucracies, is they have to realize that they have no choice at this point other than to change. You know, I heard an interesting statistic today that our student loan default rate is 25%. The average default rate on mortgages is about 1.3%. So we have a crisis right now and a bubble that's ready to break. And
Right.
it's our own fault, because we did encourage people to follow this pathway to a four-year college and tons of debt, and now they don't have jobs.
So I'll give you another stat. They say 4 out of every 100 college graduates earn more money than somebody working in the building trades.
Wow. Yeah, so those are the kind of numbers I think that you would think are blaringly obvious, that we definitely need to change the way we're approaching how people look at careers. But again, like Ken said, working with state ed, and this isn't our excuse, but,
Right.
you know.
Oh, I
Working
do.
with state ed, they move very, very slow, if
Right.
at all. So, but it's up to us to push them along a little bit.
Well, it's great that the conversations are being had at a much higher degree, and, you know, anything that I can do personally with myself or our organization that can maybe help promote some of these changes, we're more than willing to help.
Great.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
David, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Good evening, thank you. My name's Dave Mathis. I'm Director of Workforce Development for Oneida County. I've had the opportunity of being a longtime trustee here at Mohawk Valley Community College. Want to welcome you to our campus, and I want to say that my involvement on both the workforce side has been long. My involvement in education at MVCC has been long. I've served on the BOCES, Oneida Herkimer Madison BOCES Advisory Committee, and I've also served on the School and Business Alliance Committee here in Oneida County. One of my suggestions, I like your proposals here. I think that they can go a long way to help a lot of youth. But as was said a minute ago, my biggest issue over the years has been the silos that have been created at the state level. As somebody just said a minute ago, state ed, SUNY, Department of Labor, they're all separate silos. And unless we can get those silos to combine, a lot of what has been said here will not happen. It's been a challenge over the years to take the resources, which are limited, and do more with. You know, I run a summer youth program. We have about 400 disadvantaged youth in Oneida County every summer. We have about 175 college students through our college internship program. We also work very closely with the Workforce Development Board here in Oneida County to do apprenticeship programs. Mohawk Valley Community College has a major apprenticeship program that they coordinate with SUNY Monroe to provide leadership for community colleges around the state. Now, all these efforts, if there was some way to break down some of these silos, I think we would be able to serve a lot more youth and a lot more adults in terms of getting them into the various occupations that exist. Yesterday, here in Oneida County, we ran a job fair. We had over 50 employers. We had over 600 individuals show up who are looking for employment. Many of those will not get employment because they don't have the skills, the credentials, or the degree to get the jobs that the employers want to have here. I know Rosemary is going to be talking about the health field, which is a major issue for us in terms of being able to break down the problems at what I would say at the state level to get more people into the health field, because that's a growth field and will be for years to come as people like you and me age. We need to have professionals in the health field. So as far as I'm concerned, try to bring down some of these regulations, some of these requirements, and get the folks in Albany to start talking to each other would help us a lot. So
You mean by silos, you mean they don't integrate as well as they should, they don't cross over as
correct.
well as
They don't
should?
talk to each other.
Right,
Right.
yeah.
And so that makes us having to deal with a lot of conflicting regulations and requirements that, in all honesty, make no sense.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
My name is Dr. Patricia Kilburn, and I'm the new district superintendent for the larger OHM supervisory district and the CEO of the Oneida BOCES. And I'm very happy to be here. And thank you for hosting this event and welcoming so many of us to speak with you tonight. I want to give you a little background about me. I'm proudly married to a carpenter who now owns his own business, and I sent both my children through career and technical centers for education. And I have to say, very luckily, and absolutely true in the region I came from, and I'm hoping so in this region as well, children did not put pressure on other children for going to BOCES. A lot of it does come from all of us. I think important points were made this evening about teacher recruitment, teacher education, and understanding the workforce. And I also think when you talked about culture, you're onto something. Because as right here, this lovely person whose name I can't remember, I apologize, did point out as a parent she had some reservations, correct? One of the things we have to remember is when we speak about culture, there's so many parties involved in it. And when we think about all of us in this room, many of us who are now adults grew up in the 80s and in the 90s, and what was happening to manufacturing then in New York State? It was gone.
It was on the way out.
Right?
We caught the last
So
of the
we
days.
grew up to see our downtowns go empty and our factories close and our dairy farms shut up, right? And so we learned then that if you didn't have a college education, you were probably on unemployment, right? And we also learned that when new businesses came to town, sometimes they didn't last. So we have to work to educate people about what's available in New York for work, the sustainability of that employment. One thing that was said here tonight I absolutely believe in, and I tell this to my children all the time, an education is not a done turkey. We have this idea that if you need college, you send them out of high school, you put them in the college oven. When they comes out, they're fully basted and ready for work, and it's ridiculous. You know, that's not how it works anymore. The truth is, all of us are holding technology in our hands that didn't even exist 10 years ago the way it does now, and we had to learn on the fly. Credentialing, industry credentialing, is going to be the pathway forward, more so than maybe even diplomas. And the truth is that every single one of us in this room and anyone else behind us, our lovely children, are going to have to be continual learners. So this idea that we hit a benchmark of high school, then start college, finish that benchmark, and start work, in some aspects is no longer appropriate. And I think that's why we're finding so many of our students graduating from colleges and not succeeding in the pathways that they chose. I think one powerful thing that was said here tonight was an understanding of the new workforce, meaning that we don't educate children to be a doctor or even just a carpenter, although I have to say carpenters do really well in this world, so props to carpenters. I think that we need to educate children and our parents and teachers that you begin the work and you grow with the work. So my brother had the exact same example. He started as a lab scientist, and now he's one of the vice presidents at Texas Medical Center, completely through the fact that he could speak science in human language that other people could understand. So we need to start shifting the educational paradigm, the idea of continual learning, the idea of accessibility to our industry and business, and that it is sustainable, the whole idea that business industry would actually help promote and pay for work. Those are wonderful ideas, but our whole culture doesn't get that. Now I'd ask you this. If this was the 50s and 60s, these ideas would not be so uncommon. People were able to get out of high school and go right into the workforce then. It was the norm and expected thing, and college used to be the outlier. So I think we need to rethink a lot of cultural paradigms here. Now, I also do work for the state education department, so I am going to say this. It is on our radar. We are looking at college and careers. And actually, some of the latest legislation really focuses on that and does provide points for sending children through career and technical programs and P-TECH programs. But I think more importantly than points and bureaucracies, any of it, is that we have to start shifting the culture. And in order to shift culture, you have to shift perception and you have to change behavior. Think about how much could be done through advertising campaigns about the workforce in New York, about getting teachers and educators into the workforce in New York and into our schools, about having conversations like this in school districts at open houses so people could start to see that the future of work and the future of education are not separate. They're together. So thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Excuse me,
Yes.
where did you come from before? You said that, I
Yep.
think your opening statement, you said that you didn't have that problem with?
Yep, so I was actually in Mr. Smullen's area, near, Johnstown, New York, and it's the Hamilton, Fulton, Montgomery, BOCES, and you will find, when you say career and technical education to children, many of them do understand it's not necessarily the same paradigm as when we were kids. So I do think, like, both my children went through, and not once were they given any difficulty about going to the Career and Tech Center. That was a norm. Parents would sometimes say to me, "Oh, you're sending your child there? That's surprising," as a superintendent. And I'd be like, "Absolutely not. I want my children to get into the workforce and learn as they go."
So should the BOCES name and the BOCES be rebranded?
I think in terms of what we try to do for education, that has been done many, many times. So it used to be called BOCES. Then when I was in the 80s, it was called VOTEC. Now it's called Career and Tech. I think the brand change won't change the perception, right? I think the perception really goes down to working with our parents, our educators, and our children to understand the paradigm has shifted. We got to make work sexy again, and we can. I
Well, when
wouldn't put
everything's
that
going to
on
be
TV,
free.
though.
No, never, pretty much.
Just saying. Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This is very.
Who's next?
Any other takers?
We came in kind of late.
That's okay.
I apologize
That's-
for that. This is the earliest we could get here, so I'm not sure if I stand up.
No, but we're
Right over the
recording.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're,
So
no,
anyway,
go over to the,
I will. The microphone?
yeah, because they're,
Rose, I know your voice will carry throughout the room, but
then, see,
yeah.
yeah, that doesn't, the only thing that does, it goes through the
Okay.
recorder so that when we listen to the whole thing all over again.
Well, this was the first chance we had to get here, so apologize for being late, but we didn't want to miss this opportunity, and I'm not sure, and I'm Rosemary Bonacci from the Citron Healthcare Center. I'm here with Brenda Cobain. She's also in charge of long-term care at the Citron Healthcare Center, and I'm not sure if healthcare has been addressed at all.
No,
Not at all.
no.
Oh, okay.
I'm glad you're here, that's why we invited you, so we could broaden
All
our
right,
scope
well,
here.
I'm happy to help, and I'm
'Cause these are-
sure Brenda will chime in. Nursing is one of the fastest growing occupations in the world, especially in the United States. Yet, we have a critical shortage. And we invest money in marketing, in ads, in open houses, and we're trying to recruit certified nurse aides, LPNs, and RNs. And by the way, BOCES has a wonderful program. I'm going to throw that in for BOCES. So does MVCC and SUNY Poly. We put our heads together about a year ago, and we developed a program to attract certified nurse aides by meeting with school counselors, finding those students, and I am also the wife of a hardworking carpenter who's made a very successful career, 48 years, and he's had problems as well hiring people to work in his business. But also, getting back to the nursing area, we've been meeting with school counselors to try to recruit students who may not be looking for the college track, may not have direction, maybe isn't learning about that at home or is unsure. And I'm also a part-time educator, so I need to be a little bit careful here. Not everyone is looking for a college degree or does not have the skills, but has skills in other areas. So we are looking for these students who fall in the cracks, who, when they graduate, and I'll quote someone from the Thea Bowman House, Jane Domingue, we need to save them from the streets, to provide training in certified nurse aid, which we are in partnership with MVCC right now. And upon completion, the course is about $1,000. They will have a full-time job. We have flex hours, we have benefits, we have a pension plan. The problem that we're having right now, one of them, is that the minimum wage has been increased to the point where they'd rather go to McDonald's. And younger people, not all, are not interested in a pension plan right now at 18 or 19. They're interested in making $15 an hour. With baby boomers coming of age, with people getting sick at younger ages, we have a crisis and it's just getting worse by the year, of people who do require full-time nursing, long-term care, medical rehabilitation. And we don't have the workforce to help the people in need, and it's only going to get worse. We would like to see more students, even if there is some financial assistance for them, to go through this program, and upon completion, they will have either part-time work or full-time work with benefits. And we've been trying for about a year, and we did recruit some folks, correct? Right? About 3. But we're trying to do more on our own. And we can help a few with the costs for nurse aid training, but we obviously can't put everybody through the program. So is there some type of assistance that the state could provide for these individuals? And most of the times, and I've seen it, when students don't have direction or don't have that parental guidance in their lives. I ran a mentorship program at Citron before funding was cut, where we took in high school students as, it was a mentorship program. And they worked at Citron. The only qualification was that they wanted a career in healthcare. We had them working in rec therapy and nursing, doing room visits, writing letters, helping out with the activities. Because sometimes the best students who form relationships with our elderly and our younger folks in need, our younger folks who are in long-term care, are the ones who don't have that at home. And they become better citizens. They had grandfathers and grandmothers there they never had before. People who would listen to them when they wanted their advice on what to do. So it is a rewarding career, and I'm not just saying that because I've worked there almost 27 years. But we have a need. And we have the hours and the benefits and the pay. We need to recruit these young men and women. If there's something that the state could do, and we're happy to talk further about this, we are not the only healthcare center in trouble with hiring staff. It's throughout this region and throughout the country. And we really thank you for putting this together. It means a lot because we've had conversations like this, Assemblyman Miller, and you've listened. So we really appreciate that. But we have a lot of work to do.
Can I say something? We've been working with Loretto in central New York, who's also a large healthcare facility. And one of the things that they talked about with the CNAs is that currently there's no pathway from being a nurse's aide to becoming an LPN to becoming an RN. And that what they have encountered is that they do get a lot of students who come in who maybe don't think that they even have the aptitude to go to college, but after spending a year or two as a nurse's aide, think, well, you know what? I think I could jump to that LPN, which gives them a jump in pay, which gives them, but there's no pathway to do that, and state education has been, I don't know if the word is difficult, challenging to find a way to make that happen. And I think that that's one of the things that we've talked about in central New York as another one of the challenges for healthcare, because we're desperate as well.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because we actually have a program at Citron where we enable CNAs to move up to LPN. We do provide some financial assistance, some additional flex time, as well as LPN to RN. So we do have these opportunities. It's finding the men and women and recruiting and taking them, and it's nothing against the fast food industry at all. Truly, it isn't. But that's where they're moving to, because they don't have the challenges there that they would have in healthcare. But then they're not getting the rewards either. And that's where we're having the difficulty. So we do have jobs. I was at the job fair yesterday. They saw me. And it's just something to think about.
Well, the job fair yesterday, there was 50 or 60 companies from every discipline. If you couldn't walk out of there with a job, you probably couldn't.
You didn't want one.
You didn't want one. But they've all said the same thing. We need the training, we need a path, we need workers that are motivated. That was one of the biggest things we heard, but how do you teach motivation? So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Sure.
Hello, I'm Victor Zampetti. I'm the high school principal at Mount Markham in southern Herkimer County, Mr. Miller's district, and I live in Mr. Salka's district. So I'm going to give a little bit more down-to-earth view than our superintendents, who tend to fly above us slowly, building administrators. We'll talk about ag education. I know, Mr. Smolin, you asked about that. We recently started an ag program 3 years ago in Herkimer County. We were the first one in Herkimer County, I believe. I think now there's 3. And again, they're the soft skills. They're the self-learning. For instance, we hired an ag educator, and I was talking to him today, and I said, what's going on? He said, well, I have to learn all about horse splints, because we're doing horse splints today, and I've never spun a horse. So those type of kids learning those skills through their own research and stuff and self-motivation are very important. Also, I try to keep the other programs going, such as technology and, let's say, FACS, Family and Consumer Science. If you can find a family and consumer science and a technology teacher, good luck. And I found both this year. Kind of. We've used some things to get some substitute issues to deal with the total certification, which my super's probably killing me right now as he's hearing this. But those are so important to a small rural community, because those skills learned in those family consumer science are, we talked about the skills with learning things from your parents and so forth. In some of those rural communities, that's not happening. And that's where we bridge that gap, is in those types of classrooms. The technology classrooms, we're working on trying to get up to speed, but it's more hands-on research. What do you want to do? We have a half-year principles of flight class. Right now, the kids are trying to build drones from scratch, take things apart, put things together. It doesn't matter. It's research, it's learning, it's those skills. Excuse me, I wrote some notes. I just don't want to forget anything. Finding the qualified teachers for those. No offense, his son making $67,000 a year doesn't want to come teach my high schoolers, and I'll say 41, maybe 42. That's also an issue. You really have to believe it. And I have no idea, because I'll move to our BOCES program, how Zane and Kathy, Herkimer BOCES, fill their positions, because they have a wonderful staff. My students love the BOCES. And as far as what people think of BOCES, I think it depends on the district somewhat. My sons go to a district where probably they send, out of 100 kids in a class, 120 kids in class, 5 kids to BOCES. Out of 80, I send 30. It's just the culture of the community, I think, more than anything. We're very happy to send our kids to BOCES. Our BOCES has actually been very ahead of the game with the schools to careers. So they have a Farming the Future in 9th grade, they have construction and so forth, and we send all our 9th and 10th graders. 7th and 8th have things. They offer internships, job shadows, It's a service we pay for BOCES, but a small district like myself wouldn't be able to set those things up. You know, we graduate roughly 85 to maybe 100 kids if it's a large year. So that's, we use those types of BOCES programs all the time. The requirements for graduation, I know we touched on it a little bit. We are roughly 45 minutes from BOCES, so my juniors are only able to take 3 classes a day in my building. So that's English, social studies, phys ed. If they fail a class in 9th or 10th grade and they don't go to summer school, I really can't send them to BOCES because I won't be able to get them the requirements for graduation. So I get handcuffed a couple kids like that every year because we're so far out. If we were in Herkimer, it'd be different. We'd be there in 15 minutes. It's 40 minutes on the bus. That's an hour and 20 minutes on the bus every day. That eats up, you know, a lot of it. As we talk about internships, we've been trying to be a little creative with the way, you know, our kids travel. You know, we have to travel everywhere. But we do have some parents that don't have cars, or they have one car, both work. So, you know, that falls on the school district. My transportation department is sick of hearing from me all the time, but somehow we make it work. These are just some of the things we face in the rural areas that I just want to just kind of bring up. But have I seen a swing in the last 4 years? It's been a major part of me. Mr. Miller and I have met numerous times. You know how I feel about it. You know, we have kids whose parents didn't graduate high school. Are their kids going to go to college and be successful? Probably not. But can we get them a good training program, get them a job up the street at Precision, maybe get them to go to Mooresville, Cobleskill? We send a lot of kids there. They've been very successful there, DEC officers, things like that. Get a good job, move on. So thank you for holding this. It really is needed. It's appreciate it.
Nobody's in line?
Well, we have some of the BOCES guys here. They've been,
What am I, sorry you asked for more speakers. My name is David Staten. I'm the principal at the OHM BOCES Career Tech Center. I work for Dr. Kilburn. I'm just making notes of what I heard, so I'm excited that we have this. I thank you, gentlemen, for your time in hosting this. I agree with the concept that we do need to expose students at earlier ages. Our School and Business Alliance, also known as School to Careers, they're actually doing career fairs at the kindergarten age, which is crazy. So I started reading to my children before they were born because apparently early exposure to career tech. That was a joke. My wife wouldn't let me near her when she was but it's true that, somewhere along the line, you talk about the culture shift because the trades are looked at as less than now, and I don't know when that happened. Mike Rowe is a big proponent of career technical education, and he talks about how the term working harder or working smarter and not harder, and he says, what's wrong with working harder? And so we need to remind students that it's okay to roll your sleeves up and get dirty. And we talk about the shortages. I don't ever have trouble finding a doctor or a dentist or a lawyer, but boy, if I'm looking for a roofer, a carpenter, plumber, the last plumber I had, he was charging me over $100 an hour. And I told him, I said, I'm a high school principal. I don't make anywhere near $100 an hour. And he said, yeah, I didn't either when I was a high school principal. It's changed what we're doing. And you talk about, Mr. DeMars here discussed how he was a CTE student and then he went into the field because I forget this 19-year-old gentleman's name that talked about teachers that, that teach in a high school, they teach core subject areas. They don't have that experience in the real world, but career and technical education teachers do. By mandate, they have to have at least a minimum of 2 years experience in the field. So, our criminal justice teacher, he's still an active police officer. Our culinary arts teacher was a chef for many years in a restaurant. So they have that industry experience that they can share with students. And I'm thrilled to tell you we have a new electricity teacher this year. Our former one retired after 18 years teaching with us, but our new teacher was a former student. She graduated 6 years ago from our electricity program. She was a foreman with the union making $80,000 a year, and we convinced her to come and teach for 42. I'm not going to give you the secret how I did that, but that shows that it is difficult, and it would be great if we could remove that cap and increase teacher salaries with CTE, but they have that passion that they want to share with students, and they do a great job with that. I hear talking about the silos between SED and SUNY and BOCES, and I'm happy to say that there is a shift. There's some new leadership in SED, especially in the CTE arena, and they've come to. I'm fortunate to sit on a panel, a statewide panel that works closely with SED, and they've come to us and said, we do want to partner with you, and we want to learn more about CTE and how we can help support you. So there is good news. Also, I believe it was Martha, you mentioned how there are different BOCES centers and CT centers across the state, and they don't necessarily all teach the same thing, but there is a leadership committee that's working on a statewide assessment and curriculum project where we're unifying not only assessments, but also curriculum. And that doesn't mean that every BOCES is going to teach the exact same thing, but the topics and the competencies and the skills will be similar, so that if you come from a BOCES, whether it's north, south, east, or west, students have those skills. At our BOCES, we're working on a multiple, what we call it, a multiple off-ramps project where students and parents, especially parents, we need to connect with those parents. Let them know that, if you graduate from our construction trades program, it doesn't mean you're going to be simply a carpenter or a plumber, but there are, as I said, multiple off-ramps, multiple pathways. You might be an engineer, an architect, a project leader, a construction superintendent. So just to show the students and the parents, you graduate high school, you go here, 2-year college here, 4-year college, you're still in the same field, but they're just different off-ramps depending on, what your ambition is, I guess. And I'm glad somebody brought up the soft skills, because we also have an initiative, and I know all BOCES, all CTE centers do too, as we're teaching those students those habits that are going to make them successful, whether they go right into work or to college or the military or wherever they go. Those problem solving, collaboration, communication, time management. So again, those soft skills are critical, and that's what we hear from our business and industry partners too. We'll teach them the technical skills, but get us somebody that's going to show up, pass a drug test, and demonstrate the ability to collaborate and work with others. Rose from Citron, thank you for the shout out to our CNA program. Citron's been a great partner for us, and we're collaborating with MVHS too to see how we can partner. And again, not just in the health field, but with electricians or welders, because as they've stated, these companies don't just have one need, but many layers of levels of needs that we can hopefully meet. So the bottom line is, as I said, I'm excited what I'm hearing. I think there is a shift in perception. It's a very slow shift, but some of the students, a few years ago, we had a valedictorian of one of our component districts attending our BOCES. So that's the caliber of student we're starting to get. Again, not everybody's going to college, but that doesn't mean we're not pushing them to achieve as high as they can. So again, with the work of SED and the unification of some of the CT product that we're creating across the state, I do think now is our time to get together. As Mr. DeMar said too, we've always done a great job of collaborating with business industry, because it's critical, and again, it's mandated by SED that we do have their input to authenticate our program. So I think good things are happening, and again, I just applaud you gentlemen for putting this together and bringing more awareness to the topic.
Before you leave, tell me the good news on SED.
So
you said there's some, is there movement that we're not hearing?
Perhaps. Well, again, I work in the CTE arena. I know SED is working on a skeletal crew. I know there's turnover at the top. But in the CTE venue, there's some change in leadership at the top, just in the CTE section.
Okay.
And those leaders have reached out to our statewide organization and said, hey, we don't know a lot about CTE. We want to connect with you and let us know how we can help you. And as Dr. Kilburn said too, they are looking at diplomas with technical endorsement. That means the student passes it's similar to a Regents exam, but it's for career and technical education, and they are awarding additional points, if you will, treatment towards those students with those certifications.
Thanks.
Great, thank you.
There has been a little bit of a shift. For instance, the CTE endorsement does count as a Regents exam for a kid to graduate, so that really has been helpful. They have to pass math, science, social studies, English, and then it used to be plus one more, and that plus one can be a CTE exam, and that is very helpful, especially for my students. You know, we're working on getting a CTE endorsed program in agriculture in our building for that reason, for some of the more modern students to help get through that. But, you know, and the CDOS endorsement is very helpful. But, yeah, it is, they are slowly moving, but again, you stated it yourself, slowly.
Yeah. Well, I was just happy that the doctor thought I grew up in the 80s. Anyone else? Well, look again, for us up here, thanks for coming. Like I said, Michael and I will be with other assembly members tomorrow night. And like I said, we're going to be with other assembly members in their districts, the ones I mentioned in Rochester, Capital District, and Long Island, so that there's going to be a wide range of our electeds hearing the same stories that you're hearing. We are going to develop an end game plan. We'll be happy to share that with you. We did sort of the same kind of a thing when we were years ago going around with the Common Core, and how we were not happy with the way the Common Core was introduced, and how local teachers and educators were not involved with the curriculum or the testing. That did change. The governor took credit for it, but he took it right out of our playbook. So we're going to try to do the same thing with this, and you know, does anybody here know what fiber optic splicing is? What is that? The reason
It just so happens that fiber instrument sales.
Yes,
yeah.
It's the flagship company. They're located in Riskin, New York. Flagship organization of GIO Enterprise, one of 7 affiliate companies. Fiber optics. Here's your guy who knows nothing. I'm a mechanical engineer working in fiber optics. Imagine taking one of my gray hairs, splitting it in about 9 pieces, and taking the 1/9 of a human hair through which thousands of communications go, and putting them together. A splicer is a piece of equipment that takes those 2 minute pieces of pure glass and heats them so that they fuse together to become. Anytime you pick up your cell phone, you stream a movie, computers, I could just about guarantee that signal is going through a piece or many pieces of equipment built right here in Riskin, New York, the fiber facility.
The reason I'm asking you that is I had 2 children. One daughter, excellent, she's a pharmacist, so she was a good student. Yeah. My son, who would rather climb a pole and be outside, did not want anything to do with college, even though he went actually to Monroe Community College in Rochester for a couple of years before he started working with my brother-in-law. He's now, that's what he does. He's making more money than my daughter. I don't even know, I wouldn't even know how to explain how you do that. But,
We
so,
train one division of our organization is for training only. We go all over. We train over 1,100 professionals each and every year, all right, to learn how to do that. We bring them up to our training center up at Dragon Lake, and it is one of the fastest growing, particularly with 5G.
Yeah.
You know, and now you hear about the smart cities, smart equipment. Fiber enables you to move a ton of information, all right? Very small envelope, literally at the speed of light. He's in the right business. Make sure I'm using my card for
I know he's all over, I know he's all over the place.
It's wonderful.
Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Massachusetts a couple weeks ago.
And my boss, Frank Giotto, who has been in the business for fiber instrument sales, started about 33 years ago. Frank is he's a hell of a good guy. He's a great businessman, and I will give him a plug. Frank is not only a good businessman, but the prerequisite is he's a good guy, and he is all about, as Brian knows, all about training and enhancing, facilitating knowledge, not only for fiber optics, but in all divisions and all aspects of our organization.
Anyone else?
World Series.
I'd just like to say that I'm very honored to serve as the co-chair of the task force, and I want to thank all of you for being here. I didn't say very much because I want to listen to what you have to say. That was the most important thing, and the amazing thing to me, we've been now to our second task force, Ken and I together. A lot of the themes, a lot of the information is interwoven to what we heard in Buffalo. And as we continue the task force to the next 4 locations, we're very likely going to hear the same problems, the same concerns, the same themes. And that's very, very important, because when we put together the final package of our ideas and solutions, which are really yours, for us as your elected officials to transmit to the governor and to our leadership in Albany, we're hopeful that some of these ideas would take hold. Ken mentioned that in Common Core, ideas that came from from their task force actually became law. I served on 2 task forces, the Domestic Violence Task Force as well as the Infrastructure Task Force in the last 2 years. And ideas from those solutions actually became law throughout our budgetary process and things like that. So it's important to know that your time here is very valuable, but it's also very important for us to take the information and to take it to Albany and to champion this most important issue, not just for industry, but for education going forward. And I'll leave you with this. I'm the attorney. I have 3 brothers. I'm the attorney. One's an accountant, one's a teacher. The smartest one of all 4 of us is my brother Jeff, who is an electrician. Because when we went to school together, he was good with his hands. He can wire this room. You do not want me touching this room, but the electricity in the room. But the point of the matter is that even I recognize with a law degree the necessity and the need for not, as we learned before, not just middle skills gap, because there is one there, but these are professional skills that we need going forward. And that's why I'm glad Leader Kolb appointed me to serve as a co-chair, working with my colleagues, John and Brian and Robert, all good members. I've served with them this year and in previous years, and they are very passionate about this, and I'm just happy to be here today, here and with all of you, and I thank you for your time.
Okay, in closing, one thing, our doors are always open. We're in session from January 8th to June 2nd this year. But our doors are always open. My office is in the BOCES building. I walked the halls. That's how I found Dave the other day, to invite him here. But your ideas and our phones, you know, we all have big, long districts. We have a lot of windshield time. Please call. We get lonely, but these ideas are, tomorrow morning you might get up and say, geez, I forgot to say this. Just pick the phone up, call us, it'll all get put together here. And, you know, in Albany, things move slow. I'm an engineer. We have milestones and deadlines. So I wish we could put a deadline on this, because this is not a problem that's going to go away. We need carpenters. We talk about economic development. This is critical for upstate New York, New York State, and the whole country to move forward. We need to get back to 1950 with these jobs, and this makes things move. Again, thank you for being here, and we hope to hear from everyone.